Welcome to Dating Advice for Men Who Love Women Live. Today, we're going to talk about a kind of serious, heavy topic, and that's how to make 100% sure that a woman never leaves you or cheats on you. And obviously, that's one of the most extremely painful experiences that we can have as a man when a woman that you care about and you thought she cared about you leaves you. And sometimes it's a surprise for some men that her interest was falling a lot or was never there. And now she's gone and it really hurts. Or uh, he walks in on her or finds out that she was cheating. It's extremely painful, obviously. And modern society doesn't necessarily make it really easy for us to have healthy, good connections with each other. And I think that one solution that some guys have found that does work is to never actually get married or be with a woman. You know, you can become a monk. That's what they used to do in the old days, or you can be part of, a movement where you just go your own way or whatever. That's cool. But I'm here to tell you that you can make 100% sure that a woman never leaves you or cheats on you, and at the same time, attract the right woman for you and build a good relationship with her. And so this is kind of a double-edged sword because in modern times, like especially really recently, men are becoming a lot more aware of the realities of dating and relationships than we used to be because of the internet. And I don't know about you, but like when you see people on their wedding day, right? Everyone is very romantic and hopeful. They're not thinking about the full relationship for the next 50 years and how it could turn really ugly. It's not natural to think of those outcomes when you're in that first kind of love zone and committing to someone. And especially for men, I think men were even more naive than women before in most cases about the reality of this. And then 25 years later, now he's lost half of his stuff or more, and he can't see his kids. And so I actually think that this is a two-edged sword because it's like on one hand, I personally think that everyone should have to go to divorce court before they get married. And we should know the full reality of what's possible, how bad it can really be. We should be fully aware of not just the individual woman that you're going to marry if you get married or be in a long-term relationship with, but also relationships and divorce in general and how it can turn out later on, because those two people who are in this bad situation now, a lot of them were in love on their wedding day. So what happened, and can we prevent that? Well, yes, and even though our society makes it appear that there's kind of no good people to date left, I know for a fact that's not true. I get emails every single day from guys who weren't really sure if that was going to be possible for them, and then they found someone, and they send me photos. They send me invites to their wedding. I love that the most. That's my favorite thing about what I do is when a guy sends me his success story. So it's happening every day out there. I also have a lot of women who are interested in what I'm talking about, and they sign up for my newsletter, they buy my products because they wanna know from their side, like, what we're thinking, how they can be a better partner. There's lots of women like that out there as well. So I know for a fact that it is still possible, even in today's kinda crazy world where we're just more aware of how shitty it can actually be sometimes, and that's also true. So, yes, we should be kind of red pilled, I guess you could say, where we acknowledge reality of how it really is when we're interacting with women, which is not the romantic fairy tale reality that's out in society and that movies and TV shows put out there, and what we might just naturally think. It's a lot more than that. And I've had experiences living in societies where they still do kind of more traditional arranged marriages. And so it's not really that common around the world in history to have marriages based on love. And in our society, that means it's based on the woman's love, to be honest. Our love is kind of assumed and implied because we're the one who's asking. And so, you know, it's not like in the past everyone was cool with each other and in love and nothing bad ever happened. It's just we're more aware of it now, and now we have marriage based on love. So we got to do our part to deal with that. And so, how can we make 100% sure that a woman never leaves us or cheats on us without just becoming a monk, giving up, saying all women are horrible, whatever. Well, I'm going to give you three steps to that that include a lot of other kind of details underneath them. And if you follow these three steps, you will not experience this pain and confusion that comes with the worst outcomes of dating and relating to women. And so the first one is just to fortify your own self and your own life and to make yourself as strong as possible. And the reason I start with you is because a lot of times we like to put things on women, but it's healthier for us and better for us if we take responsibility for the outcomes that we get in life. Now, outcomes themselves are not, you can't guarantee them, uh, but you are responsible for your actions and behaviors that lead to certain outcomes or not and give you a higher probability or not. And so we should focus on ourselves first. And here's another really kind of unromantic truth that people don't consider when they're first dating someone, which is normal. Why would you think about this? So the truth is, number one, two unromantic truths actually that are related. So the first one is almost all relationships end at some point. And by relationships, I just mean like if you go on 10 first dates, you might get 3 or 4 second dates. That's already like a connection that's kind of ended. Or maybe she doesn't even give you her number. Most of the time, when you meet a woman, it's going to end, even if you're amazing. Okay? So that's the truth. Most relationships end. And that means to attract the right woman for you, it's a good idea to fortify yourself against that and feel stronger inside yourself. So even though those things will always hurt a little bit, that it doesn't crush you completely into the ground and you give up and you don't talk to the right woman for you, who's the next one that comes up. And you're kind of not confident enough to do the things you need to do with her. And she's ready, she wants you. And so the first thing is, I guess you could even say all relationships end at some point because, not to be too morbid, but even if you do everything right with her, you both love each other, at some point, one of you is going to pass away. And then that relationship is, at that point, also ending. And so it's a natural part of life for also relationships to end. And we don't necessarily want to think about that when we're on a first date. Maybe you shouldn't on the date, but we should be aware of how the whole reality is when we get into something like this, especially if you sign a legal document and include someone fully in your life. And so all relationships end. Be ready for that. Second thing is, the second part of this is a very unromantic thing to say, but it's just the truth. And that is, if a relationship ends and both of you are not passed away, there's only one parachute on the way out of a relationship. And let me explain what that means. What that means is the person who ends the relationship feels a lot less pain and suffers a lot less and has a lot less consequences and bad outcomes from that. And a majority of the time, it's the man who doesn't have the parachute in our modern society. It's usually the woman who leaves and the man is suffering. It can go the other way too. It's just, I would say, like 60% of the time, the man doesn't have the parachute. And as unromantic as that sounds, I think that you should consider making sure you're the one who has that just in case. So that's what I want to say about that. We should fortify ourselves against all this stuff because a lot of stuff can happen. And this includes things like really doing a lot of things that you enjoy doing. So you feel pretty good about your life on your own, cutting out a lot of things that you don't want to do so that you feel good naturally on your own in your own life before a woman ever even comes into your reality. And then you can share that positive space with her and those good internal states that you have most of the time with her. And to have a strong social circle. So if you're dating someone for a couple of weeks and you really like her and then it doesn't work out, it's not as devastating because you have a support network around you and you have more things to do. It kind of takes your mind off of it and allows you to process it better. So make your own life really strong first, and then you can approach women from a place of wanting to share that with them versus like, oh, I need a person now to make my life better. And then you're asking her to do something for you already, where you're both kind of contributing to each other instead is a better way to go about it. So fortify yourself first. That's number one. And then let's get into the actual details of interacting with women that allow you to protect yourself and not have these outcomes happen. So, number two is make sure you filter out the wrong women for you as fast as possible. Now, this can be really hard because it's hard enough to kind of attract a woman initially. It might take a while to get a number or to get a first date or to get a second date. And maybe she kissed you back now and you're really starting to like her and you have a good connection. And you're interested in her. And on the third date, you find out, oh, she's not a loyal woman. Well, you have to stop dating her at that point if that's the case, or you're going to allow those negative outcomes to happen later, and you're responsible for that now. So you have to filter women out. And here's the cool thing about if you have the attract and keep her system already, that acts as an automatic filter for a lot of the stuff that's required in terms of a woman being the right woman for you. And if you follow that system perfectly, it will filter out a lot of women who are gonna have some kind of who you're gonna have a big issue with later automatically. And it's hard to do, but again, that's okay because you're fortified now. You can handle it. You're gonna have another date later. She's not the only woman in the world. It's gonna be fine. And it's better to do it now after 3 dates than to be with her for 15 years and then she cheats on you. So, what do I mean by the right woman for you? Well, there's specific criteria. It's in my systems, but just really quickly, first she has to be interested in you, not coming to you with some other kind of agenda, like she wants to get married and become a resident of your country, for example, or just on a first date she wants a free meal. We want to filter out women who have another agenda besides just regular genuine interest in you as a man romantically. And a lot of guys don't have that filter. They're just going on their interest in her. That's it. They don't look any further than that. We're not going to do that because we're going to prevent these negative outcomes. And so if you find out, and so here's the thing, if you follow the system, right? Like it seems really simple, but some of the things that I talk about have a lot of layers, even if it's a really simple thing. So why do I recommend that we take women on inexpensive first and second dates? Well, it's because that filters out women with an agenda and women who don't have a good attitude towards life. Okay, so everything that I recommend is not just to raise the interest level of the right woman for you, it's also to protect you from the wrong women for you and to help you filter them out faster. And we don't necessarily want to do that because it's like, I'm interested. No, I want to attract her. Well, this is the next level of that. And if you want to prevent these negative outcomes, this is the level you got to operate on, period. So don't be nervous to ask a woman out for a coffee date or for a happy hour because a sweet, right woman for you who's actually interested in getting to know you as a person and she has genuine romantic interest, she'll be happy to meet you for a coffee. There's nothing wrong with that. She has a good, flexible attitude in life. That's great. She also isn't sure if she wants to invest a lot of time in you yet. She doesn't know you. Like, let's find out. It's great for both of you. It's kind of low key, it's low investment. We can kind of see if we vibe with each other. We can see if we have a good time on that first date before we go further. It's lighter, also. It's not so serious and heavy. And most guys go too fast too soon. And so this has so many layers to it. And it's like you literally just filtered out gold diggers, women who want to use you for something, because they're not probably as likely to show up for an inexpensive first or second date. And this is especially important if you have some kind of wealth in the background. You don't want to show that off right away because you're just going to attract gold diggers. And by the way, showing that off too much is repellent to the right woman for you because she's not there for that reason. And it's like, why are you telling me about this stuff? That's not what I care about. She's kind of a more normal woman who's there for the right reasons. She cares about different stuff, the stuff that I talk about. Okay, so all of this stuff goes really, really deep. And so follow the system so that you can filter out women faster as well. And then the other part of this is when you're looking through that, so she has to be interested in you and available. And a lot of guys skip that part. And if she is, then you need to find out if she has all the other qualities that we need over the next year and a half before you commit to marrying her at least. And those qualities are the acronym that I use is GREAT, and that's GREATT. So it's great with two T's. And the last two are she needs to be trustworthy and trusting. She has to have the ability to trust you as you earn it. Because some women can never trust you, even if you do earn it. And so that trustworthy one is a really big deal for us. And we must commit to a woman who is loyal. That's one part of that trustworthiness that she has to have. And this is critical because the actual main value exchange between a man and a woman in a loving romantic relationship in our modern society is you are trading your commitment to her. I'm not going to date anyone else for her loyalty to you. That's what's the main thing being exchanged. And here's the thing about that: a loyal woman, if she's deeply in love with you, literally cannot cheat on you. If her interest level is 9 out of 10 or higher, it's a really interesting thing that happens in the mind where she might be attracted to a guy for a second, but any of those thoughts about him kind of dissipate really quickly because she thinks she already got the best guy. Not very many men are experiencing that level of a woman's interest right now, but when you get to that point, she can't do it. Those kind of thoughts and feelings fade very quickly when they initially happen because we're all humans. We all get attracted to different people. We see a good looking person on TV or whatever, yeah, but at that point when her interest level is actually 9 out of 10 or higher, which again most men never experience, she's going to take her posters of the guy she used to like and put them in the fireplace to keep you warm. That's what we want to get to because she can't cheat. That's your only adultery insurance in life, is making sure that her interest level gets to 9 out of 10 or higher and then stays there. That's it. And if a woman is disloyal, she's not able to be loyal to you. That means that she has some kind of issue. And that's the next part of this. So she has to be interested and available. She has to be great. And the last part of that is scars and baggage. Some people have so many scars that are unhealed and so much baggage that even though everything else is lined up and she is genuinely interested in you, she could still cheat or make some other kind of big problem in the relationship. So that's kind of the last criteria to look at. And it's related. But here's the thing that I want to get to about this filtering out women. The second point, the last thing is women do not lie. They don't hide this stuff. They constantly are communicating who they are to you. We just tend not to pick up on it or listen to it and read between the lines to figure it out because our interest is so high. We're just focused on that. And we're not seeing the reality of her. And she's telling you. So like you're on a second date and she's kind of like, "Well, I've cheated on every boyfriend I ever had." When I first realized that women don't really lie about this stuff too much, I was shocked. They will literally tell you this. I've heard it, this kind of stuff. So pay attention. That's the key. Like pay attention to the red flags. Don't just let them go because she's super hot. You can, but then you're not protecting yourself. And I think that's really important. You're a cool guy. You don't deserve that level of pain and suffering that comes from not going through that. I would rather do a little bit of work now and make it a little more uncomfortable now than face all that pain and confusion later. And that's the main point. So filter women out faster. Yeah, maybe she's cool, maybe she's hot, but she doesn't have this thing. Boom, next one. And that gets you closer to the right woman for you who's not going to do that stuff to you as long as you raise and maintain her interest level. So number two is filter out the wrong women for you as fast as possible. Even though it kind of hurts in the short term, we're going to think long term. So fortify yourself, filter out the wrong women for you as soon as possible. And there are right women for you out there, 100%. If you live in a really tiny town, maybe they're not in that town and you got to do something about that, but there is someone out there. So, number three is when you do meet the right woman for you, make absolutely sure, like we've been talking about, that you do all the steps that are necessary to raise her interest level from wherever it starts to where she's actually deeply in love with you at that 9 out of 10 or higher level. And what usually happens when we meet a woman is our interest level, usually for the most part, most of the time, is higher than hers when we first start. So we like her at like a 7 or 8 out of 10. She's at like a 6. Let's see what happens. We go on a date, we have fun. We're a little bit of a challenge afterwards, a little mysterious. She's like, "Ooh, I kind of like this." Tick, 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 tick. Now hers is a 7, yours is a 7. It's even. You go on and we just have to outweight her. Her interest level is going to tick up slowly over time as your behaviors show her that you have the male qualities that she's looking for. And it usually takes longer for her to fall in love than you. So however you feel about her after like 2 or 3 dates, she might feel that after 6 or 7 dates, and we gotta wait for that. We can't just push it on her and ask her to be our girlfriend after 2 or 3 days just because we like her a lot. It's about her interest level. And again, that's your only adultery insurance in this life is being with the right woman for you, who's a good woman, who's loyal, and making sure she's deeply in love with you. Because, let's say you even do manage to get her interest level all the way up to 9 out of 10. Great. You get engaged, you get married. Then you start taking her for granted and you don't do the maintenance program to keep her interest level at 9 out of 10 or higher. It starts ticking down. 5 years later, it's at like 7 or 8. She's still interested, but it's kind of like, tick, 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 tick down the wrong way until all of a sudden it's 0. You're not even aware of it. She stays with you for a year or 2 because she's not ready to leave yet, but her interest is 0. There's nothing you can do to bring it back now. And she keeps having negative experiences with her until with you until she builds up so much resentment over that time period where her interest is 0 already that she knows there's no chance she's ever going to come back. And that's usually when she leaves. And for the man, a lot of times he's like, "Oh man, this happened overnight. What happened?" When she didn't have any interest for a year or 2 or 5 or 10 already. And now she just actively dislikes him enough to finally say, "All right, let's sign that paperwork or I'm out of here." And we want to avoid that. And the way you do it is to be with the right woman for you who's loyal and to make 100% sure you raise her interest level to 9 out of 10 or higher. And then you do the maintenance program to keep her there. And the maintenance program is you make sure you respect her, you give her teamwork, and that's all outlined in my attract and keeper system as well. And then positive humor, because that provides kind of a protective buffer for your interest levels and the relationship itself, and positive attention. So she's like kind of making an emotional bid, requesting attention from her, and you give it to her. And then you also actively pay attention to her by continuing to date her over time, no matter how long you're with her. You keep taking her out, you keep that romance alive. It doesn't die unless you allow it to die. Okay, so we got to do the program that allows her interest level to rise. And this is the thing, like when you're first meeting a woman and you go on a first date, you're not necessarily thinking about 25 years from now. But if you do, then you'll realize like, oh, this is actually a course of like 6 to 10 dates at first, not a first or second or third date. We're thinking in that whole box of during this first 6 to 10 dates or 2 to 3 months, the only thing that we're doing is making sure her interest level is going up. That's it. That's the main focus. And getting to know her and filtering her out if she's not the right woman for you, of course. But if she is the right woman for you, she keeps passing all these things and you see that she does have the characteristics that we need and you like her and she likes you. Our only focus is to raise her interest level in that first period because it's going to be important your entire 25 or 50 years with her or whatever. So we have to think about that whole big picture and not be naive to these negative outcomes, not necessarily kind of be black pilled and negative and focus on it. Just realize that's the reality. And to prevent it, we need to fortify ourselves, make sure it's not going to devastate you if something goes a little wrong with the woman one time. We need to filter out the wrong women for us as soon as possible. And maybe they're just not the right fit for you. That's also fine. Doesn't mean she's a bad person in general. So it's not a judgmental thing. It's just for you. And then, of course, if she is the right woman for you, the last thing we got to do is really 100% make sure her interest level gets to 9 out of 10 or above before anything else. That's the number one thing that matters. And then once it's there, make sure it stays there. We don't want to just get married and start taking each other for granted. And then all of a sudden it's like, what happened? Well, we didn't actively do the work to keep it alive. Just like you have to do maintenance on your car, you got to do maintenance on your relationship, or it's also not going to run well. So that is how you make sure that a woman never leaves you or cheats on you. And if you follow those three steps to the details and you followed my system perfectly, that is definitely guaranteed. Now, it's not guaranteed in the early stages. Like, it doesn't mean every woman's going to give you their phone number, or you might go on a couple of dates and then she ghosts you. That's still going to happen. What I'm talking about is if you find the right woman for you, she falls deeply in love with you, she stays deeply in love with you, those outcomes are not going to happen to you, guaranteed. And so the system that I put out in Attract and Keep Her is not just a way to attract the right woman for you, it's also a protective bubble around you that protects you from all of those negative experiences and outcomes that can easily happen with women. So to follow it is not just good on the positive side of attracting a woman, it's also good on the kind of more realistic negative side of like, oh, this is potential pain and confusion later. I'm going to protect myself. And I think protecting yourself is very important, and also opening up to the right woman for you over time in the right way. So that is how you do all of that and just make 100% sure that it doesn't happen. And yeah, Levi said that this advice is good for men of any age. You know, it's really interesting. I have one client who's 93. He's still learning. That's so inspiring to me that people in their 80s and 90s are reaching out to me, asking me questions, trying to learn this stuff because they never did it when they were younger. And it's such a specific area of life and such an important one that there's a guy out there who's 93 years old. He's still working on it. And I admire that so much that someone is still working on themselves and working on their relationships. It's really cool. And I have young guys who are in their teens as well that reach out to me. So that's the one of the most surprising things that I've experienced in doing this is the range of ages of men who reach out to me or to who listen to my stuff or read my newsletter or whatever it is. And speaking of young guys, the reason why I decided to do this topic this week is because there's been kind of a drama going around online about I don't know if you watch soccer or what they call football in the rest of the world. I actually love American college football, for example, but I also like soccer, and I was a soccer referee for 17 years, even though American football is my favorite sport. So I follow it, and I was actually in Spain during the Euro 2024 tournament, the European Championship this year, and I got to watch Spain play against Germany at a bar in Malaga, Spain. So that was really cool to watch it with local people who were obviously cheering for Spain. So that was fun. And they won. They ended up winning the whole tournament. And they have a really young star player named Lamine Yamal. And I think he was 16 when the tournament started, and now he's 17. And I don't really want to focus too much on a kid who's less than 18's love life, but it came up in society kind of like on social media this week, and so I wanted to address this. And basically what happened is this kid, he's 17 years old, he just won the European Championship, which is like the second highest tournament in international soccer, only second to the World Cup. It's awesome. He's one of the youngest people that's ever done it, if not the youngest. He's one of the star players from the team, and it was going around online that his young girlfriend cheated on him. She kind of saw him in a like video call or whatever, like sitting on another guy's lap and stuff like that. And so I bring this up because the ideas around that from a lot of guys were kind of like, see, like even if you're this international celebrity who's probably wealthy or going to be really wealthy, it can still happen to you, and women are going to be like that. Well, this is the last kind of piece of this. There's a few things about it that I want to say. First of all, he's doing fine. Apparently, he's already got a new woman. There's pictures of him now with another really good looking woman. So he's going to be fine, guys. Don't worry. It's cool. I'm sure he's going to be good. But really, what I wanted to say is all of the stuff that I just said applies once a woman is over 22 years of age. It's another key detail to this. Okay, so, they say kind of our brains don't fully form until we're like 25 or so. Well, a woman's emotional state in terms of how she interacts with men doesn't become solid until she turns about 22 or so. And so if she's under 22, don't get married to her yet. I'm not saying that if you're under 22, you shouldn't date and you shouldn't have a girlfriend or something like that. You certainly can. Just don't get married until both of you are at least over 22. Because one of the factors that's not considered is a woman who's under 22 and she's not fully formed emotionally yet in that way, kind of is more immature in that way, she can kind of fall in and out of love faster. And so it's not as consistent, it's not as set. But once she's like 23, 24, at that point, she's consistent in her dating behavior. Okay, so this applies. Make sure that a woman is over 22 years old and all the other stuff we just talked about when you're thinking about this. And so if you're like out there, you're like 16, 17 yourself right now listening to this, or you're 20, have a lot of fun. It doesn't mean you can't have a girlfriend. You can have a serious relationship if you want. Just remember that you're both under 22 right now. A lot of other things that can happen that wouldn't happen if she was 24, the same person. So keep that in mind as well. And also, don't be so black pilled. Just acknowledge the reality fully, which is, yeah, some of these negative outcomes can happen and we need to protect ourselves. That's absolutely true. And this guy, Lamine Yamal, yeah, he had a negative experience a little bit. It was very public. It's all over the newspapers. So I'll show you this really quickly here. If you can see this, it's like it's in all of the tabloids and newspapers and stuff that here he is. So this is very public and they're very young. So it's a little weird to focus in on it so much. I don't want to go too deep into it because they're young people. But don't be so negative when something like that happens because, yes, it is possible. And at the same time, he's already got a new woman who's very good looking. She's probably cool. It's fine. Okay, so yes and no, it's a paradox. It's always been this way. We're just more aware of it now, and our society isn't really that conducive to building healthy connections with in romantic life. And with women having more kind of economic value, they want to date up for the most part, which has always been the case, but now they're at a higher starting level. So it does make it a little more challenging. But if you follow the process I just outlined, those 3 steps, you're still gonna be successful if you keep going and you implement everything 100%, not just kinda cherry pick the parts of the system that you like. So, that's all I have to say about today's topic. And, I wanna do some questions now. So if you have a question, pop it in the chat, and I'll start off with one that I got last week because I think it's funny. And I got an email that just asked, and by the way, I get so many different crazy situations that people ask about. It's really interesting and fun. But anyway, I got a question from a guy last week by email that said, "How do I attract rich women?" All right. Well, first of all, let me just tell you that my expertise, as you already probably know, is female interest. A woman falling deeply in love with you. And what is the right woman for you, how to attract her. That's where I live. Okay. So I don't necessarily recommend like we talk about gold diggers, right? Like it's kind of wrong. I mean, it's not wrong. Like everyone can do what they want to do in life. It's short, live the way you want, I guess. But we want to avoid gold diggers because it's not good for you. They have an agenda. It doesn't really have anything to do with you. And so we don't want to be that kind of person ourselves and just go after rich women. So it's hard for me to answer that question because I wouldn't encourage you to do that in the first place. But I mean, if you want to attract a woman from means that is the right woman for you, then hang out where those people are, be like them, and do all the other steps that we always do. That's what you got to do. And by the way, there are guys out there who do this. They take advantage of kind of older, wealthy women that are single. They kind of shower them with attention. They're kind of an attractive younger guy. It does happen too on our side sometimes, just not as often as from the other side, from women having that as their main consideration. So it does. There are guys out there like that, but we don't want to be one of those guys. So that's my answer to that question: is don't worry about it. Make your own money. All right. So Ryan says, let's see. I really want to focus on work this month and hit a goal for myself at work, I'm guessing. If I stop trying and caring and focus solely on work, will I lose all momentum? Is that a smart move? Oh boy. Okay, this is a really good question because what I have found is the more you focus on yourself and your own life, the better you do with women, actually. It's kind of a paradox. And it's not because, so they have this thing out there where it's like, you'll find her when you're not looking, or you'll find him when you're not looking for the women, right? And what that really means is, first of all, you can't really control when you're going to meet the right person for you. Like you can go on dating apps, you can try to meet people when you're out, you can go to different social events and talk to people. But then really like she's going to accidentally bump into you at a coffee shop and you're going to see each other and look at each other and be like, "Whoa, there's a spark there." It's going to happen probably randomly. Like I met my girlfriend when I was doing laundry. I was walking down the stairs at my apartment building to go change my laundry, and she came out of the elevator. So you can't always be just because you should take action to kind of meet women sometimes doesn't mean that's how you're going to meet the right woman for you. And then secondly, it just means that you're not needy. You're not in a needy state when you're with her. Like it doesn't mean you're not looking. You still want that. It's just when you're not so like needily focused on it and you're actually healthfully focused on your own self and fortifying yourself, like we talked about, she's going to feel that and you're going to have a better chance with her anyway. So yeah, I think you should focus on that. And still, you have these skills in the background. You know what to do. You know when to text her. You know how to ask her out. You know what to do on the date. You know to keep it light and fun, and playful, enjoy it. You know to ask her open-ended questions. Just follow all the steps in the system and focus on yourself in the meantime. I think you definitely should focus on that. And here's the thing, like in the back of your mind, if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to focus on working myself because that's what's going to make me attract women, now you're still operating from that lack of abundance frame a little bit still. So fully get in there, lose yourself in that, and you might find that women are coming to you a little more. All right. Christian says, when you say no long distance, what if they're still able to meet every 1 to 2 weeks, even if they're, say, 2, 3, or 4 hours away? The distance wouldn't matter in that case, would it? Great question, Christian. For me personally, because I've seen thousands of these examples, I really think it does matter. I think 30 minutes is the zone that we want to be in if we can. You can extend that up to an hour or so if you live in a big city where it just takes a long time to get somewhere. That's cool. But here's the thing, right? Like when you first start dating a woman in those early stages, like dates 1 through 5, let's say, we don't want anything to be heavy and serious or to put what I call relationship pressure into the relationship where it's too serious too soon for her and she starts to get like, "Ooh, I'm not at that level yet," and that lowers her interest, right? And so one of those things that can naturally do that is she lives 4 or 5 hours away or 3. It's a lot more effort to see each other. We don't know each other very well yet. Why are we doing that? Why is he doing that? Why is he investing so much time and energy into me when I live so far away already? We've only been on 1 or 2 dates. That crushes female interest already. And so it's like, let's say go back to the beginning where we kind of evolved. We didn't have telephones or mass transit. Somebody lives 5 hours away, you got to walk over there. It doesn't really like that was never happening, right? Like you get with someone in your village. So That's kind of a like a really basic way to talk about it, but really like if it's more than an hour away, then you are 100% relying on her high interest level to drive your connection with her forward. And there's not as much that you can do to raise her interest level to 9 out of 10 or above because you're already not being a challenge by going so far to meet her and putting so much effort in already. The effort needs to be escalated a little bit over time, not like, well, I just met her. She's hot. I'm going 5 hours now. Why? Aren't there local women you can date? Now pre selection is out the window too. It's not attractive. So it can work, okay? I have seen situations where even people are video chatting online for a year or two and then it works. But the only reason it worked in that 1% of cases, which is probably not going to be us, we should never think that the exception is going to be the rule. When it applies to us, it's the rule, okay? It's because she was so interested in him right away. She made it happen. She was driving it. So, as a general rule of thumb, keep it to 30 minutes if you can. You can stretch it to an hour if you live in LA and it takes an hour to drive somewhere, or you live in New York and it takes a long time to get across the city. That's cool. But more than that is really stretching it and it puts a lot of pressure on that connection. Now, if you build that connection with her first and you raise her interest level up to 9 out of 10 or higher, and she gets an opportunity somewhere and she talks to you about it first because she doesn't want to lose you. And she's like, hey, I have this thing, but I want to make sure you're cool with it. I'm not going to make a decision until we talk about it together. And then you agree, and it's temporary. And she goes over there for 6 months, and then she definitely comes back at the specific date. That's fine, even if you're not married yet or whatever. But when you're in those early stages, it's really hard to build it. So keep that in mind. You can try it if you want to, but just remember that you're now depending on her driving it with her own high interest. And you have to let her come to you even more and make sure that like she's kind of putting effort into it more than you a little bit. Like she's the one coming closer most of the time. So like 2 out of 3 times she's visiting you, and 1 out of 3 times you're going over there. So it makes it a lot more difficult. It adds another complexity layer when it's already a really difficult process. So just keep that in mind. Juan says, do you have any audiobooks available? Yes. Attract and Keep Her is available in audiobook format. I think it's actually even linked in the description below. I'm not sure, but I think the link to the audiobook is in there. If you're subscribed to my newsletter, it's in the bottom of all my newsletters. The audiobook version of Attract and Keep Her is right on there. So definitely check that out. And if you're not a subscriber yet, definitely go to datingadviceformenwholovewomen.com, sign up for one of our free books or programs, go through that stuff as well. And then you'll be on our email list. And we send out a newsletter every Thursday. It's usually packed with a lot of good value. So highly recommend it if you haven't already. All right. Any other questions? Thanks for the questions, guys. Yeah. So to follow up with what you usually meet halfway, that's good. It's better if this is just a general thing, but it's better if she does a little bit more because, again, like this has to come from her now because of the distance. That's why it's difficult. It's already anti attractive male qualities. The situation itself, the context is already against us. So see if you can make it where she's coming to you a little bit more without you don't want to change patterns. You don't want her to pick up on something that you're trying to do it. You don't want her to pick up on it, but just see if you can encourage her to come to you a little bit more than you're doing it. Not like 80-20, but like 60-40, 55-45. You have to let her kind of drive it a little bit more than you normally would. That's for sure, if that makes sense. All right. So if there's no more questions for today, it was a pretty heavy topic, but it's very important. And again, it's both sides. Yes, there are a lot of negatives to this that can happen, do happen in the world. We should be aware of all that stuff. It's not all rainbows and chocolate cake out there in relationships and dating, as we all probably know by now. And on the other hand, it's still possible if you follow the 3 steps that we talked about today, you're going to be good. So, Hopefully that was valuable to you, and looking forward to seeing you next week at the same time, same place. Hope to see you there.